Hi, Karen here. Today I want to talk to you about when I quit a very important job I had, which changed my life for the absolute best forever. I'm also going to give you the top 3 things that I considered before I made such a life-changing decision. I have to start this journey way back when I was 17, and I made a decision. I was going to be a scientist, and I was going to wear a white lab coat and make incredible discoveries for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, halfway through my 4th year, I got quite ill, and it was actually kind of life-threatening. Fortunately, I survived, but that did make me rethink things a little bit. I went to Europe for a year. I lived in Antwerp, and of course I traveled around Europe extensively and made the very conscious decision that one day I'm going to come back here to live. I came back to Canada after being in Europe, and I made the decision I was not going to be a scientist anymore. But that's not the job I quit. I decided instead to pursue another avenue, and that was music. I went back to school and basically started again. I got a BA in music. I decided perhaps an academic life as well as a performing life was in my future. So I went off to do my master's at McGill. Obviously was working as well. I'd been working full-time basically for the past 3 years leading up to that as a musician. And when I was doing my master's, I decided, no, I cannot see myself grafting like this until I'm 70. So I made a decision I was going to leave music. But that's not the job I quit. I decided I would start again. This time I went to law school. It took me 5 years to qualify as a lawyer. I did quite well. I enjoyed it. I had a few jobs while I was there. One of them was for my tax professor, whom I adored. I got a posh job offer at a beautiful little tax firm in Toronto that had very high-profile clients. And much to the chagrin of my tax professor, I turned it down. But that's not the job I quit, that's still coming. Instead, I became a criminal prosecutor and then a criminal defense counsel. So I did that for quite a few years. And I really enjoyed that. That was a great job. I absolutely loved it. I loved being in court. I loved the dynamics of it. I was obviously very much in my element. I loved litigating. But I soon found myself in my mid-30s having a bit of a thought about stuff, because all of a sudden it didn't have quite the same appeal to me that it did when I first started. So I had to think, what am I going to do about this?
I lost my job. Well, actually, I didn't lose it. It lost me.
And this is the job that I quit that really changed my life forever. The actual courtroom stuff, you can imagine, it is fabulous. I can't say it enough. But there's a lot more to it when you are working on your own like I was. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. I can't tell you how many times I was having dinner with friends, and then the phone would ring, and that was it for me. I was now gonna have to go. I canceled holidays. I rarely had a weekend where I was free of work.
I'm also gonna need you to go ahead and come in on Sunday, too.
I'm not afraid of hard work, but I also think there's a lot more to life than work, and I always have thought that way. If I was the type of person that just loved work, 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 this is the perfect job for you. But I have never been that kind of person. I've always had a lot of outside interests, and I just felt life was passing me by. I just was getting less happy about getting up in the morning going to work.
If you want something in life, reach out and grab it.
So I decided to give it all up. But how did I come to this decision at this particular point in my life? I was in my mid-30s. I wasn't a teenager. I wasn't someone who had just gotten my bachelor's or something in my early 20s. I mean, I was a proper adult at the time. What was I thinking? What were the 3 big questions that I asked myself in order to decide if this is the right move for me? I did have to look at the senior counsel that were also in courts, and I had to think to myself, am I going to do it like them until I'm well into my 70s? Is this it for me? Like, this is it for me now for the next 40 years, 30 years? And that was a really, really important question, because I had to be honest and I had to say, no, that is not what I see myself doing. I think there's a lot more to life than this. Of course, I think this was easier for me, believe it or not, in my mid-30s than it would have been if I was in my early 20s. The reason being is that I had already done this a couple of times before in my life. The life experience lessons can teach you that you can recover from this. This is not a trauma. This is something you can actually do. If you're in your mid-30s and you've never taken big decisions like that, sort of life-changing decisions, it can be just as frightening. But again, you can go back on your life experience and realize, no, actually you can do this. It will work out. It would be more frightening to stay in the situation than it would be to leave it. Is the worst thing that could happen unemployment? No, that is not the worst thing. You will always find a job. You'll always find a job. It may not be the job of your dreams, but you will. You'll put food on the table, you'll find a place that you can afford to live in, and on it goes. One thing that you have to have when you're being confident and making this decision about making these life-changing moves is that you have to be humble. You have to have the humility to take a job. You just do it. You have to earn money, you have to eat, so you just do the job. And in the meantime, you make contacts and everything else while you're doing that. I have never been one of those people that could actually articulate the answer to the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have never been able to do that, and when I reflect back on my life, it would have been impossible for me to have said that at any stage or any year of my life. Even if I can't articulate what I'm going to be doing in 10 years, I definitely can articulate what I would not be doing in 10 years. The answer was move to Europe. Specifically, I wanted to move to the Netherlands. That was my goal. And it took a little while to get there. It took me, I would say, 8 or 9 months for me to get the legalities of it fixed out. I got what's called a right of abode from the UK. I then also had to wind up my practice, and I had to sell my house. And of course, like most things in life, it all happened very, very fast, right at the last minute. Once I made the decision I was going to move, I never doubted it. It was actually very peaceful. I didn't stress about it at all, because I had come and gone through the stages I should have gone through to when I was making that decision. It just felt absolutely right for me to do it. Go with your feelings, go with your instinct, follow your heart. I had to decide where it was that I was going to go. I decided on a place I'd never been to before, but I'd always heard great things about, and that is Edinburgh in Scotland. You have to remember, this is the time internet was sort of in its infancy in the mid-90s. There was no Google, there was no YouTube. Can't imagine a world without them now, of course. I absolutely picked the right time to go there as well, because it was the year of Braveheart, Shallow Grave, and Train Spotting.
And I wanted to put across the general idea rather than the details.
I got on a plane. I had no job, I had no friends, I had no family, I had nothing. I just went over there. I landed actually in Glasgow airport and took a bus then over to Edinburgh. On the bus, I sat beside a native and I asked her, what is the best place to live in Edinburgh? She said Morningside. I went into the estate agents the next day. I said, please help me find a place to live in Morningside. I bought a little car, I got a flat in Morningside, and that was it. I started making job applications, and I said, definitely, I'm not doing something legal. This is a total change of life, and I'm doing something different. So I got a job in a legal department for a large oil company up in Scotland. But there was a method to my madness because I worked in the area that was looking at expansion, and they were moving an office to the Netherlands. So I got a job there. So it was all working out. I was off to the Netherlands, and then I met the Welshman. It was not something I was looking for, it was not something planned, not at all. But again, it just felt right. I ended up moving to Wales. I ended up requalifying and getting legal training here in England and Wales. That took another 2 years. In the meantime, I decided to have a couple of children along the way, and I've been working at a very kind of unusual job for the last 20 years, which means that I get to travel all over the place for. But the reality is that I have loved my job now for the last 20 years. I have gone from one great job experience to another since emigrating here over 20 years ago. Sure, there's been moments where it hasn't been 100% perfect and great and terrific, absolutely. But if I'm going to reflect back now to any of my big job decisions that I made, could I have imagined being this happy if I'd stayed in that job for 30, 40 years? How unhappy would I have been right now? Good luck if you're making these decisions for yourself. Remember these 3 words. Don't be afraid.